Good morning, Eastern Oregon, and welcome to this September 12th version of AM Live on EOA, your connection to Eastern Oregon, and we're on Roku and on the EO Alive network. How are you, man?
It's first Monday, second Monday, third Monday.
It feels a little bit like a Monday today. Yeah.
It does feel like a Monday. It's weird.
Yeah. It's weird. It's just a little clunky.
That's all right, though.
Yeah. So, yeah. How are you this morning, man?
I'm good. Good. It's just another week, the fall. Last week was super busy for me. I think I did 17 high school interviews.
Yeah.
And you know what the funny thing is? And I called their coach about this. I called them out.
Yeah.
You would think a new team like the cheerleaders, right?
Yeah.
They would be like, like if they saw anything that I did last year with interviewing every single senior athlete, made a little video at the end.
Yeah.
I literally have not interviewed one of them yet, and I've had them all scheduled.
Huh. So
no call, no shows. And so I called Kimberly, their coach, and I talked to their assistant coach, who's a cheerleader at EOU, and I'm like, dude, it's not on me. Like, one of them, get this, BC, one of them texted me and said, I can't make it, da-da-da-da-da. I said, okay, well, we'll reschedule for tomorrow. We reschedule for the next day, right? Like an hour before the interview. Things just got out of control for me today. Can we reschedule in a month? I'm like, I just told her, I was like, dude, I'm going to be long done with this in a month.
Can you have my people get a hold of your?
Yeah, exactly. like, okay, you're a high school cheer. I'm doing this for you, not for me. We don't get anything out of it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we're not getting paid for it. I just do it because I think it'd be cool for them to have. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I'm just getting the cheerleaders, and I'm super supportive of cheerleading. Like, I've been wanting cheerleading at the high school for a long time.
Yeah.
I support EOU's cheerleaders. I take pictures of them. I include them in every, you know what I mean? And then, so it's just kind of like, it's odd to me. But their coach, she was like, I talked to her on Friday, and she was like, I'm going to handle this. So, yeah. And then their assistant coach is like, well, it looks like we're going to have to do some more conditioning. Yeah. Which is good.
Yeah. Well, you remember, everybody remembers when you learning to be a team player, learning to be an athlete, learning, and it's just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other way I look at it too is a few of these kids are going to go to college and play sports, right?
Yeah.
And this is preparing them for media, because there's going to be times where, you're going to get interviewed or you're going to have to do a media day for your school. You know what I mean? And this is just a free practice run for them. Yep. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's kind of cool. They get to come sit in the studio but then there's just some people that it's not a priority.
Yeah.
That's fine. I got every single senior athlete last year. I would hate to not have a couple. You know what I mean? That would break my heart.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah. Especially a new team. And good for them to figure out.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out too. There's like 16 cheerleaders out.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They got more than EOU does, which is, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And trust me, I've been pushing for this. I became friends with the lady that's in charge of the cheerleading for the whole state through Shrine.
Yeah.
We've become buddies, and I'm like, we got to figure out a way to get LeGrand. Like this year, Heather came to the game and was recruiting. You know what I mean? I put them in contact, and so cheerleading is important to me. I think it's cool. I think it's a huge part of especially football Friday nights. It really is.
Yeah.
And we made a huge step by just somebody stepping up. Like George said, they just didn't have anybody that was willing to commit, and Kimberly committed, and now we have a team, and I'm going to support them. I mean, that's just what I do.
Good deal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you want to do sports?
Let's do it.
All right.
Grand High School had a big win on Friday night. They traveled the game was originally supposed to be at Crook County. We found out that there were some issues with Crook County's field and insurance or something, so they moved it to Summit in Bend. And LeGrand beat Klamath Union 30-0, which, like I was telling BC before the show today, I don't judge this team yet because that Klamath Union team is super young, and I kind of felt like this was how that game was going to end. The Weiser team that beat us the week before is an Idaho team. So this Friday, though, right here on EOA Live, 6 o'clock, Estacada. We haven't beat them in 5 years. They're always good. They've fallen off a little bit. I think they've lost their last 2 games of the year, their first 2 games of the year. But here's the thing: both of their games this year so far, they've played the team that was ranked number 1. So the first week, the team that was ranked number 1 beat them on a last-second touchdown. The second week, the team that moved to number 1 beat them on a last-second touchdown. So Estacada is always good. We're going to find out where we stand in Oregon on Friday night. And the other thing I want to talk about is the polls. Don't pay attention to them. I always say this, like, we're still in this, like, vortex. It's a black hole. You look at the polls. Last week, I think we sat 6th, even after losing to Weiser. Weiser, I mean, it's not an Oregon school, so it shouldn't affect you too much, right? Well, we go to Bend, and we beat Klamath Union 30-0. We dropped to 7. In the coaches poll. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Who's voting on these? I don't. I know Rich, our old coach, didn't vote very often.
Yeah.
So it's not a conglomerate. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not everybody deciding, but still, at the same time, like the polls, they don't make any sense at all to me, and they never will. I don't think it'll ever change in Oregon. It's just they punch numbers in. So the one poll is whatever coaches respond in 4A.
Mm-hmm.
They tally it up, first place votes, boom. The other poll is just punching a bunch of numbers into a computer and it spits out a list. And even that, because of the league that we play in, which granted has gotten better because of Pendleton. We don't have enough substantial teams in this league,
right,
to make, to be rated real high, because we're playing teams like Ontario.
Yeah.
Except for in soccer. Ontario's good in soccer, but all the other sports. LHS volleyball is at Vail today at 6. Let's talk a little bit about EOU this week. The men's soccer team will be on Friday and Saturday. They'll be at Northwest and Evergreen. Every team for EOU is on the road this week, so There's no EOU games at home. Women's soccer's at Northwest and Evergreen at 3. So they play Friday and Saturday at 3 after the men. The football team lost to Whitworth at home this Saturday, 42-28. That's a tough loss there. We needed to win that game. It's not a conference game, but at the same time, it's a D3 school that we should beat. We've lost to them the last 2 years in a row. We showed signs of brilliance early in the first half. I thought we were going to run away with it. And then it was hit a wall.
Yeah, that was the first game I've been to in a long time. And
it was rough.
Yeah.
The second half was super rough.
Right. But EOU started good.
They did. The transfer quarterback, Quincy Glasper, he got beat up that whole game. I mean, we did not protect him well. He was hurting by the time that game was over. I have coach camp at 10:30 today, and that'll come out today, and it'll be weekly on Tuesdays from here on out. Volleyball swept Multnomah and Warner Pack. No big surprise there. They're still undefeated, number 1 team in the nation. They're good. I don't think they'll get tested this weekend. They travel to Northwest and Evergreen. They play Friday night at 7, Saturday at 5. I think the first test that really is going to be Corbin, and Corbin's number 5 in the country. Corbin, this irks me too. The CCC gives out awards every week, right? And this week, because Corbin had 3 games, because they played their travel buddy this week. The way it works is you play 2 games on the weekends, and on your travel buddy week, you play your travel buddy on a Tuesday.
Okay.
So our travel buddy, C of I. If we're going to Northwest, C of I is going to Evergreen, and then we swap.
Got it.
Well, on the week of your travel buddy game, you play them on a Tuesday. You play them twice during the year, once at home, once on the road. And it was Corbin's travel buddy week, so they got 3 games. Everybody else only got 2. And the CCC gave all the awards to Corbin. They give him hitter of the week, attacker of the week, defender of the week, setter of the week, and team of the week. And it's like this misconception that, Corbin's like the best team when I don't think they are. I mean, I really think EOU is. And Corbin's lost twice this year, and we haven't. And so But Khaki explained it to me that, you know, they had an extra game and that's just kind of how it works. But it's still frustrating. Benny runs this Friday. The cross country team opens up their season at the CCC preview in Idaho. And then they'll send their top 7 or 10 runners to Washington State to the WSU invite. So the team will split on Friday. They'll go to 2 different places. And the men's team is looking really good this year. They got 3 guys that are going to be competing for CCC championship. Christian Mendoza, George's son, Justin Ash, and I always forget the third kid's name. Benny would know. Oh, this is terrible. I feel so bad. Hunter. I think his name's Hunter. That's bad. I don't remember his name. But all 3 of them will compete for the CCC championship this year, as well as the team.
Good.
So it's cool. There's a lot good going on at EOU. Like last year, they won the conference cup, which is the best athletically, the best team in the conference all the way across all sports. And last year it was at EOU for the first time since 2016. So, yeah.
Good deal.
That's all I got for sports.
All right.
Brought to you by Rockin' Sons Tire and Auto. Go see JB and the boys.
So when you have a travel buddy and you play them you're both on the road playing. Is that right?
Yeah. So say every weekend, EOU on road games. So if they have road games, like I said, like at Northwest and Evergreen, which are both Northern Washington.
Right.
C of I goes to one of them on Friday night. We play one of them Friday, and then we swap.
Right.
And then if we have home games, so does C of I. So if Northwest and Evergreen comes here, we would play Northwest on Friday night. They would play Evergreen on Friday night, and then they would swap.
Right.
And it's all based on location.
Right. But you don't play your travel buddy.
You play them on Tuesdays, 2 times a year.
At home or on the road? Both
I said
of you
that.
are on that.
You play them once at home, once on the road.
Okay.
You play your travel buddy 2 times during the year, once at home, once on the road on a Tuesday.
Oh, so when you play them so what I'm trying to think is like, so if both travel buddies are traveling somewhere, do they play each other when they're at? Okay, yeah.
No,
all right, thank you.
Why would they play each other?
Yeah.
No, they just swap teams.
Right.
And it's all based on location. Like
I get
OIT and Southern are travel buddies. Bushnell and Corbin are travel buddies. Northwest and Evergreen, us and C of I, because they just do it based on how close you are.
No, totally makes sense. Yeah. No. Yeah, I'm sorry. Occasionally you have to educate me.
Yeah, you're good. You don't go on the road and play your travel buddy like.
Well, that didn't make sense. Like, how would you accommodate that?
Yeah.
That's all right. All right. Well, hey, let's look at.
And you don't travel with them either. It's a misconception. Like you don't like hop in the same bus as them.
Yeah.
It's just called a travel buddy because you're playing in the same area and just switching and coming back. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you hop on a bus with them.
Yeah.
They're not your buddies either.
They're not.
Is definitely not that wouldn't work out very well.
Yeah. Well, especially because we're not particular fans of C of I, right?
No.
But
they are our travel buddies.
Right. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I mean, and not that we're not fans. We're just competitors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a fan.
All right.
I'm not a fan.
I know you're not a fan.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm a fan of our kids from LeGrand that go to C of I. There's a couple of them, Grayson Neer and Owen Rinker plays soccer for them. But
so pretty day today, up to 80 degrees. Looks like it's going to maybe warm up towards we get to the end of the week. So
all the way up to 88 like yesterday. Yesterday was warm.
Yeah. And we do have you already mentioned this, but we do have a home game.
It's a 6:00 kickoff, so pay attention.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's an hour earlier.
Okay.
I don't know why we do that with Estacada. It's not like they're traveling any further than anybody else.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not like they're an Idaho team.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, but we always have. So it's a 6:00 kickoff from Community Stadium. It'll be live right here on the Eastern Oregon Alive TV network.
EO Alive network. Yeah, we're going to start hammering that and pushing that a little bit more. So, because by the time, and the reason is because somebody says, well, where can we see you? And it's like, by the time you list all the stuff, it's like, it's just easier to refer to it as a network. So anyhow, Yeah.
You got to remind me. I need to post the picture of the Roku winner too today.
Yeah.
I got it. I got to get that posted up. I can't. What was his name that won that? I'll look it up and tell people right now.
Yeah.
So on last Friday, I gave away a Roku device for your TV. Jordan Greathouse won it. Yeah, and all you had to do was comment Roku in the comments, and there was a lot of them, and I just put them in a randomizer, and it ended up being Jordan. So he came last week, or when did he come?
I think it was last Friday.
Last Friday,
yeah.
Picked up a free Roku. It's like a $40 value. It just plugs into your TV's HDMI, and you have Roku on your TV.
Yeah, and I talked to him for just a minute, and he said, "Yeah, this is going in my trailer."
Sweet.
Yeah, so
Perfect.
he knows Roku, and he was like,
he probably has a Roku TV, and
right,
it's not. Right. It ain't gonna hurt to have two.
No, I have two at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's nice. My parents have.
Yeah.
Roku
well, and they're just
all their TVs.
They're so. For those that don't know, Roku is just like when you go to it kind of replaces your smart TV. When you go to your smart TV app, there's a whole bunch of little icons and apps. That's kind of what the Roku is.
Exactly what it is. It's it's the answer to Apple TV.
Right. But it's faster. I mean, it's quick. So if you use a smart TV, that smart TV hub in the TV is sometimes a little laggy. It's kind of slow. And sometimes an external box like that allows you to have more power. So anyhow, all right. So Paul Anderes is going to be with us. Union County Commissioner is going to be with us here in just a minute. Also, this is the second game. This is the second home game this Friday. And if you are a business, this is a great opportunity for you to advertise. We're streaming both the home games in LeGrand and the home games in Pendleton. And if you know of businesses in Pendleton that would benefit from this, be sure and let us know. But anyhow,
yeah, it's a great value. I mean, you can't really beat it. I talked about in the live stream. There's branding.
Yeah,
it's well worth it. If you have a business and here's the thing, a lot of people watch these streams. A lot.
Yeah,
a lot. You would be surprised.
Well, and since it's most of the sponsors are their mentions. So then as you're talking and as you're conversing, then their logo goes up on your screen and you talk about the business, and it's during gameplay. And that's a very powerful means. So, because it's not during a commercial,
no,
it's not during a halftime break or whatever it is, it's during gameplay. So people are watching the game, and so yeah, it's got a lot of value, and that's a big thing for us. We don't want to sell you something that we don't think is going to be effective for your business, because frankly, that's just not honest. And so we want to try and give you something that really is worth it. So,
I always preach too. It's a lot easier for me to talk about something I believe in too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like the businesses that do advertise with us during football, I believe in them. You know what I mean? And it becomes part of, like the mantra.
Well, and it's funny. Just recently I was talking to a business about this, and they said, "Oh, well, we've kind of spent all of our money on sponsorships." It's like, this isn't a sponsorship. This is advertising.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we appreciate those that support it because it's our local high school football, but there is a real benefit to it. It's not just your name on a fence.
Yeah, it's not a sponsor. Like, it's not you just giving free money for something.
Yep.
You're getting value out of it.
Yep. All right. Well, hey, we'll be back with Union County Commissioner Paul Anderes right after this. All right, we're back with Union County Commissioner Paul Anderes. How are you, man?
I'm well, thank you. You?
Doing good.
Good.
Yeah.
Morning, Doddsy.
Good morning,
Yeah.
sir. How are you?
I'm good. Good.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
I was telling Brent yesterday, I was like, it's already been 3 months. Like, it feels like it was just yesterday we were talking about Rulon, and he's coming on. He's going to come on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I reached out to him, and he's going to. We don't have anything set in stone yet, but he responded. He gave me his cell phone number, and he's gonna come on.
Needs to come and visit his sister.
Yeah, that would be even better to get him in studio. But I don't know if we're gonna do the morning show or just a sports interview yet. It just kind of depends on his schedule.
Yeah. Very nice person.
Yeah, I'm excited.
For those that might not know what they're talking about, Rulon, is it Rulon?
Rulon Gardner.
Rulon Gardner was an Olympic champion in 2001, 2000, and his it was a heavyweight wrestling champion. I mean, it was news around the world.
Beat the Russian who hadn't been beaten 13 years in international competition.
Yeah. And his sister is actually the cardiologist up here at Grand Ronde Hospital.
Helped save Paul's life.
She did.
Right.
And so I don't say that lightly.
Yeah.
She is one of the main reasons I'm sitting here today.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Well, I called him Paul, Commissioner Anderes.
Yeah. Paul works for me.
So anyhow, and Paul ran into Rulon, met him at a restaurant, and they conversed. And so we're really hoping to be able to get Rulon here either remotely or in the studio and just talk shop. How fun would that be? Yeah. So anyhow, so how's the commissioner world? What's going on?
It's 3 months. Lots happened.
Yeah.
It's been busy, but it's really good. If I may, this came out of the last legislative session, really at the 11th hour. A group of folks that I work with, commissioners that I work with, it's called Agri-Stress Helpline. And what has been identified is people in agriculture, whether farming, ranching, or farm labor or farm work, tend to have a much higher suicide rate than other populations. And there is a specific line for them to call so that they can get the help they need with people that are more in tune with their particular needs. And it's called Agri-Stress Helpline for Oregon, 833-897-2474. And very proud that we were able to get that across the finish line with the legislature. And literally the very last bill that passed the Joint Ways and Means to go to the full House and full Senate. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's and not Eastern, excuse me. Oregon State University Extension Service is the guiding entity that's putting that together, and so you might want to watch for rollouts there. But great program. We have way too highest suicide rates in our ag and natural resources communities. So we're hopeful that this will provide some relief.
This is Suicide Awareness Month too.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
September, Suicide Awareness Month.
So yeah, it's a great program, and be more than happy to share that graphic with you. And so if you want to put it up on your medias, to get the word out,
we'll do it.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not surprised, but I wasn't aware. I didn't know that suicide. I mean, I didn't know that fact that there's that stress. I'm not surprised though.
Yeah. And one of the things that I talked about in my testimony is if we save one life, the money is well spent.
Yeah.
So, and in the big scheme of things, I never thought I'd be somewhere that would talk about hundreds of thousands of dollars not being a lot, but in the state budget, it's a fraction of a fraction. And this expenditure is $300,000, and they were able to fund it. And that's going to get it rolling and keep it going for quite some time.
Wow. Yeah. I had a farmer once tell me that every year, this wasn't too long ago, every year is like you're playing poker and you take all of your possessions and you push them into the middle of the table.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a crazy way to live.
It is. And thank goodness that they do it. Otherwise we wouldn't eat.
Yeah.
Bottom line. And I appreciate our ag community and farming and ranching, all facets of it, and big part of our local economy as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's a huge part of our community, but it's kind of, they're quieter. I mean, there's, if you spend your time in the cities like I do, or the rural areas, in our rural areas are very urban, or excuse me, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But our urban areas are very rural.
There we go. Yep.
Yeah. But it's just easy to forget all that land out there and all those guys that are, and girls, women that are like families that are dedicating themselves to what it is that they're doing. Yeah. It's tough. Yeah. It's funny. One time Tanya and I, one of the local farmers, Rob Beck, took us flying. It was for Tanya's birthday, and it was late November, right before Christmas, and we're up above the valley somewhere, and there were some cows feeding down there, and they were kind of had an interesting pattern. And she said, "Wow, that is really interesting. Why they're feeding in that line?" He goes, "Yeah, that's just the way I happened to drive the tractor this morning, So it's like, oh, those are your cows. Yeah. So, but it's easy to forget. So,
yeah.
So what's going on?
Just recently got done with the second half of the commissioner exchange that I participated in.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes. So in July, Commissioner Sushila Jayapal from Multnomah County came out here, spent the first afternoon with Brett Red Farms, and about 3.5 hours there, seeing a lot of different portions of his operation. Kind of a highlight for her. She got to ride on one of the big tractors, and she was pretty excited about that. But really good conversations with Brett about, what concerns him, what is, I don't want to say fears, but what his worries are of his business in the future. Talked a lot about irrigation, power consumption, water, and then the different crops he was in the process of harvesting. So that was the first night. Second day, Commissioner Jayapal wanted to see kind of how county, state, and feds work together, and fire was a really good medium to talk about how we work together in those areas. So we started out at the local ranger district talking about fire and how they approach, how they're sent out to initial attack and then extended attack. Had really good presentations by the district ranger, or excuse me, not the district ranger, the forest supervisor, and then the local fire folks. From there, we went to dispatch, which county owns that building and leases to the Forest Service. We went to the tanker base, which fortunately at that point was not being used. It was idle, but clearly ready to go at a moment's notice. And then we went to the rappel base, another building that the county owns at the airport that leases to the Forest Service. And kind of just by luck, there was a Type 1 helicopter. One of the big ones came in, and that was pretty impressive. Good visits with them. And then we went to Elgin, had lunch at Billy Bob's. And while we were there, the owner said, "Hey, would you like to tour?" And so she they weren't slaughtering, but they were processing carcasses at that time. Went to Boise and toured the plywood plant as part of the housing and more economics of our community. And then we went to Timber Ridge, the new Northeast Oregon Housing Authority facility that's being built by the Coke plant. And then met with Gus Chachas for the cottages, tiny homes, and Veterans Village, and the H Avenue housing that he does, which I think are all really good things to take pressure off of the local community's housing shortage. next morning, she and my wife Kelly went to the farmer's market. It was crazy days, so they had lunch at, and I apologize, I don't remember the name of his new business, but Merlin's Catering.
Yeah.
We went up the Grand Ronde River, participated in an outdoor activity up there, went from there to Imbler, and had a really good visit with JD Kent and 3H Cattle and 3H Ranch, and really talked about where they fit in and the traditions and the history of that particular place. It was started by his grandfather, and now his children are starting to work in the business, and nieces and nephews are starting to work in the business. It was kind of breakneck speed the whole time.
I was going to say that's a lot of schedule.
It is. And then we went to Buffalo Peak. Dana gave a great tour of that and an explanation of how it's a county function. And from there, we went up to Anthony Lakes, got an opportunity to kind of talk about the fuels reductions and fire fuels reduction that had been going on, as well as some logging. And then capped off the trip with a wood-fired pizza at Anthony Lakes.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. So you were probably exhausted being the tour guide of all that.
I got to tell you, I'm very proud of the things that Union County has, and the conversations I had, and it's no secret, Commissioner Jayapal and I could probably not be much different in our political views. I'm relatively conservative. She's relatively liberal, but there were some things that, and to me, it struck me as the time in the conversation where the connection was made. And really, we deal with a lot of the same problems, just on a much different scale. And that really came to light for me when I went there. So I ended up starting on a Thursday morning. It was raining in Portland. I mean, it hasn't rained there in I don't know how long. I'm sorry, excuse me. And got a tour of their offices real quick. And then I went to one of their commission meetings, which is, there's a lot of people there.
Yeah, I was probably, you're right. Like, what?
Yeah. And again, what struck me is that they had a good, healthy discussion, but it wasn't terribly long. And they ended up making a budget adjustment and spending basically 15% of Union County's total budget for the year. That quick. And that was one of the things that kind of struck me is, the volumes of money that they are dealing with compared to what we do, I wouldn't want their job.
Yeah.
And then just last week, they ended up spending $105 million in one session of their commission meeting on homeless services.
Wow.
From there, we went to their behavioral health facility, and I readily admit, walking into it, I was a little uneasy. There were people that were clearly in distress, and some of the things that I would associate with typical people in crisis, screaming, yelling, arguing with, and there doesn't seem to be another half to the argument there.
So what you're saying is mental health issues.
Oh yeah, we were at their facility, so we go through it, we tour it. They're doing some really good things. They treat 100 people a day. That's their capacity, and so I said, "That's 100 people. That's good." I said, "How many do you think are here in either homeless, addiction, or mental health crisis, or not even crisis, in those categories?" And they said, our place and time count puts it somewhere around 6,000, but more likely it's 8,000 to 10,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did the numbers for Union County, and that would be somewhere between 200 and 400 people in that same. And probably, I think one of the discussions we had is, I think in Union County, our homeless population tends to be out of sight more than it is in Multnomah County. But I don't think that it's really necessarily that much smaller when you look at the numbers of it. But really doing some great work there. They have showers, they have laundry, They have addictions treatment, or not treatment, counseling. They have mental health. They get, if they qualify, they can go into a 30-day program on the second floor. If they do well on that and they're showing progress, they can go to a 90-day program on the top floor. So it's all really kind of integrated into the one facility. For me, the biggest change was when I walked outside leaving, and those same people that were in crisis and having an episode, if you will, I realized that even as in the condition that they were in, as much as they were suffering, they were standing in line to get into that place. That's what they were doing out there.
Right.
And it was like, okay, that's, I mean, and not that I was super comfortable being around them because I'm not exposed to that very often, but it was really kind of telling, thinking about how they're looking to get help, and really not a handout.
So I have a question about that. So, because part of the thing that part of the thing that people struggle with is thinking outside of themselves, thinking outside of their own perspective, or whatever the case might be. A balanced person or a thinking person, they will seek after that. It is like, I don't, even if they have a judgment, it's like, I have a negative attitude about that. I want to know more about it to make sure that my negative attitude is correct. I mean, there's a thinking that, so, and certainly from Eastern Oregon, we look at all of that homelessness stuff and just the wreck of the sidewalks in Portland and whatever the case might be. And so, and we're judgmental. I'm judgmental. It's like, yeah. So, but I guess what I'm wondering is, now that you've had that perspective, what is it that we didn't know? What is it? What are the misconceptions that you might have had that have been adjusted? What did you learn by going through that have adjusted those Eastern Oregon perspectives?
Couple things. It's been more than a year ago. I want to say about a year and a half ago, at an Eastern Oregon Counties Association meeting, we had a very similar discussion. It's like, you know what? We really don't like when, and call it Portland, call it Metro, call it whatever, the West Side, refers to us or thinks of us as a bunch of backwards, uneducated hillbillies or hicks or whatever. And the conversation from there went to, how would you like Portland Metro to be referring to whatever county we're from in the negative light that we're referring to them? And so not all of us, but a lot of us backed off from our criticism of Portland, Multnomah County, Washington County. And but my takeaways from that are, I mean, I had a pretty good idea of what I was going to be walking into. Was completely wrong. If you look at whether it's social media, and there's some especially Instagram accounts that are really focusing on the negative.
Right. And I've seen them.
Yeah. And
hundreds of them.
Yeah. You look at the nightly news coming out of Portland, couldn't be any more exaggerated. Well, it could be, but it's very much exaggerated.
Right.
I mean, there are some spots, and she was not shy about showing those spots to me and talking about things they've tried, things that haven't worked, things that have worked. And my perception of that area really changed being there, because there are some beautiful neighborhoods still.
Sure.
And what was interesting to me is how thin of the line was between some of those very nice neighborhoods and some of those that are really in distress from homelessness, addiction, and mental health. But it's not to put too fine of a point on it. It is not the dumpster fire that it is made out to be.
Right.
There's problems.
Right.
But they are so isolated. But the focus is on those isolated, either neighborhoods or encampments or the RVs. And they've done. We went down Marine Drive, which I remember going down a couple years ago, and it was a mess and very much cleaned up. Is it perfect? No, but and a couple of my takeaways were that, these are people that are trying their very best to solve the problems. I think part of it was it took so long to get there and it got so bad. And I don't know that or I'm pretty sure that COVID didn't help any of that out. And now they're having to deal with this huge mess instead of a smaller mess. But they are taking steps to make it better.
Paul, my thought on it, like, so I've always thought Portland is one of the most beautiful cities in the whole country.
Mm-hmm.
Like, aesthetically, it's gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
But I've also been the person that, yeah, you know, you can make your judgment, but like us over here, we have no business judging what's going on over there. We don't live there. We don't. It's like, find a better hobby in my eyes. Like, who cares?
Right.
You know, like,
right. Or here's an idea.
We don't get to judge.
How about we help them out?
There you go.
Going looking down
Beautiful.
our nose out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And maybe it reciprocates. That's why this program is so huge in my eyes. Like the commissioner swap. Like, we get to see from a different level what's going on there. They get to see from a different level what's going on here, and then maybe we can find out a way to touch hands on a couple things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the third Friday, started out with and I would call it kind of an underground, under the radar. They're building very temporary housing to get people off the street. They're in conjunction with a Arab church in one of the outskirts of Portland that's giving them some land to use. And again, they're getting people off the street. They're getting them housed. Is it ideal? Certainly not. But they are making some. And then they also have it's lived experience is what they call it. And I'm like, well, what's lived experience? It's like, well, those that have been addicted and homeless are now helping run the shelter facility.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it was. And well, we talked about that too. And it's probably not going to work in long term, but that's a given. But you know what? It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Went to a farm that they have going on just on actually it's very close to the Edgefield, what used to be the Oregon Poor Farm, and they're reclaiming some really overgrown blackberry fields and teaching young people how to farm, and also providing a lot of food to the communities through that. I went on when I saw someone that works for Multnomah County at a meeting prior to it. They go, "Oh, you're getting a culvert tour," and I'm like, "Culvert tour?" And so. Never would have realized when you pave that much area, all that water goes into the storm drains into the creeks, and then the speed and volume tends to blow them out and scour and destroys salmon habitat. So they're rebuilding the culverts to make them be able to take that extra volume more easily and provide better passage and habitat for the fish and endangered and threatened species. So that was actually very interesting, and it's surprising how you can go from a parking lot of a strip mall to a creek bed and really not even know that you're in a fairly large city 100 yards apart.
Wow.
Pretty wild down in there. Gosh, where do we go next? Then we went to Albina for they're trying to rebuild a traditionally Black neighborhood, and they've got young, pretty and very, very bright. That came across very loudly to me as how bright these young people were working on getting that neighborhood rebuilt. And I never knew this. You think about the Rose Quarter and the Convention Center and all that. I mean, gems of Oregon, right? Well, those displaced huge numbers of families when they put those in and built those. So now there's portions that they're trying to bring back as a more historic community. Then had a pretty serious, long conversation with the pastor on gun control. And I talked about, I own guns, I use guns, I hunt with guns. I have them readily available a lot of the time. And he talked about how they've come in, the shootings in Portland, which he said are not. He said that's one thing really the news is not exaggerating. And he fully understood my right and want to have those guns and to use them. But he said the problem is there's so many of them coming. I said, where are they coming from? I said, is that the break-ins that we hear about in our communities? Or are those guns going there? and he was of the opinion, I haven't fact checked this, but that they were the ghost guns coming in from overseas.
Yeah, ghost. That's real stuff. I've watched plenty of documentaries on ghost guns, and what that is, I'll explain it if you don't mind. They end up little villages in other countries, Africa, South America. They actually pay people to sit there with these molds and put together guns that don't have serial numbers, and they buy them from these people for dirt cheap, and then turn around and sell them in the United States for very expensive, because if you get a gun without a number on it, that means nobody knows you have it. And that's why it's called a ghost gun. And it's a lucrative business. And a lot of it is the cartels. A lot of it's the drug cartels that are going and paying these people in these small villages, which there's no police, there's no way that they could really get caught, and bringing them the supplies, the metal, the molds to make these guns and the parts, and then put them together, and then they bring them over here and sell them without numbers. And there's a lot of them. I've seen a couple in real life, like real ones.
So, and that was one of the conversation I had. I said, whether it's my shotgun, my handgun, or my rifle, I practice. Not necessarily super proficient with a handgun, pretty good with a rifle, and I hunt a lot of birds, so I'm pretty darn good with a shotgun. So, how do they learn how to use them and use them? They don't. He said they're just pulling the trigger, and that's why there's so many collateral damages.
Let me ask you a question that perhaps, because the thing I can't get, the disconnect that I see all the time, is how does taking them from law-abiding citizens, how does that help solve the problem? And
the person that I had the conversation with is not suggesting that. But again, it needs to be addressed. And a bit of a backstory. This pastor, his son was shot in the back 7 times by his best friend who was angry with him. Not even, it was like a fairly petty argument, and his son is dead. So, I understand him, questioning the value and need of guns. But at the same time, I thought it was pretty open-minded of him to say, you have the right, you have you can. Well, I'm not trying to infringe upon your right, but he says we've got to get them out of the hands of the wrong people.
Well, yeah, and I think everybody agrees with that.
Right.
I'm not sure where this is today, but I think last night or the night before, the government of New Mexico put a month long. She took away the gun, said you cannot private carry, even if you have a concealed carry. The only people in the state that can carry guns are, law enforcement and so on and so forth. And that was a reaction because of children that had been killed, and the way they described it. And again, you don't ever get the full story, but the way that they described it on the news is these kids were killed in some kind of gang drive-by violence. And so really tragic. But again, how does taking guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, how does it solve that problem? This
particular gentleman.
Yeah. Okay. He was. Yeah. Thank you.
Good conversation. Yeah. There were a lot of, we agreed to disagree.
Yeah.
And then Saturday morning, and as far as learning, it probably wasn't the best part of the trip, but wow factor, I was able to go to the Hawthorne Bridge and go to the very top of the Hawthorne Bridge when it opens up. Yeah, and you want to talk about a beautiful city on a Saturday morning, and the sun shining, and the dragon boats are on the river. I'm very glad and my takeaways from that trip, the 2 main ones are, we've got a lot of similarities, probably more similarities than differences. And then the other is the enthusiasm and the quality of people they've got working for their county as we do in Union County. And, when I first started in this job, I said, man, we've got some great people government workers? No way. And we do.
Yeah.
Both counties have really good people working for them. Perfect? Nope. I'm far from perfect. So I'm glad I did it. Couple of other things. One is we joke that the 2 of us are going to bridge the urban-rural divide by ourselves, but at least it's a small step in that direction. And the other is Whether we're going to be able to pull it off, I don't know. But we're talking about doing it again at some point. County Exchange 2, Part 2.
In the beginning, when you talked about numbers, money, Multnomah County's projected budget for 2024, $3.4 billion.
Yeah, with a B.
Yeah, with a B.
Yeah.
Not an M, a V.
Right. And last spring, early summer, Union County passed their largest budget ever, and it was $63 million.
Yeah, which is pocket change compared to $3.4 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm so glad I did it.
So I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So, I love Seattle. I lived in Seattle for 6 years. Seattle's a beautiful city. Portland is a beautiful city. San Francisco is a beautiful city. And I've enjoyed the city part of that over the course of my life from time to time, but all of those cities, even in downtown Spokane, I don't know whether it's still there. There was an entire block that was taken over by a homeless encampment. Where were those homelessness? Where was that homelessness before they were on the sidewalks of some of these cities? And I think the way we got there, I guess this is my presumption, and I'm wanting you to correct me if I'm wrong, or correct me from what it is that you've learned. My presumption is that we got into COVID and everybody's like, hey, everybody's just trying to get by. Let them camp wherever they want to camp. And that allowing that just kind of made that problem bigger and bigger. Or I don't know. You tell me. I'm
feasible. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm bottom line. I
was hoping you learned something that you could educate me.
Well, we talked. Here's one thing I did learn though.
Yeah.
I said, the stuff. There's a tent and there's shopping carts and stuff and stuff and stuff. And she goes, I had to ask, Commissioner Jayapal said, I had to ask the same thing. So you lose your home, or you're about to lose your home.
Right.
First thing that you do is you get together your most valued possessions and you move to your vehicle. Not to put too fine a point on it, you would move to your van.
Right.
And you've got and you move it out so you can sleep at night, and then it gets rained on or snowed on.
Right.
And then it becomes less valuable to you.
Right.
And then at some point, you don't have the money to fix your van, insure it, it gets in a wreck, flat tire, whatever, whatever. And now you move to a tent.
Right.
And again, you downsize and take whatever you can, but you still want to keep all of those possessions, and they get ruined by the weather. And then it just
accumulates.
Yeah. Part of the problem. Yeah.
Right. But I'm still trying to figure out, where was that stuff 5 years ago? Where were those homeless?
I can't answer.
And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't actively be trying to solve the problems that they are in the business of solving.
Mm-hmm.
But I still haven't quite figured out how did that happen? Where were they at before? Certainly, COVID, it accelerated all of that.
I think you're right, but I don't know.
It accelerated that problem. And
I think another acceleration to the problem, and especially in those three cities that you mentioned, Portland in particular, Portland Metro. So Blue Mountain Barbers across from the local right next door to the landing.
Mm-hmm.
That was a home at one point. You have a pretty good idea of the price on that is well over $500,000. Which I would consider the size and layout of it would be a starter home. And depending on the neighborhood, a house like that could even be $750,000. And society has priced folks out of a place to live, and then apartments go up, everything goes up, and folks really struggle to make ends meet.
Maybe it's path of least resistance too. Humans take the path of least resistance. That's natural. There's places, the biggest homeless population in the country is Skid Row in LA. There's like 5,000 people that live on Skid Row, homeless people. Maybe Portland was offering better services, like more food or more, and people take the path of least resistance and move. You know what I mean? Like The biggest homeless population in the United States, though, is Southern California, LA. Like it's like 4 miles of homeless people.
Right.
And maybe there's an opportunity for them, like because maybe Portland offers better services, or Seattle.
Well, and I heard a homeless person testify to that on a TV report.
Right.
It's like, hey, this is the best place in the world to be. You get free food. It's good food. I mean, and I understand that. And I'm not California. If you were going to live outdoors year round, it's not a bad place to live, or live without air conditioning.
Well, 5,000 people wouldn't in Skid Row wouldn't disagree.
No, and yeah, I'm totally sympathetic for where they are and how we need to get them to someplace more productive. And thankfully, I mean, and I've noticed the homeless population in our area increase. That has increased everywhere. And I think that the county and the city they have they've been very deliberate about where not to camp, and I think that's been positive for the environment of the downtown and the environment, and there are some active things that are happening that are trying to help those people that really do have needs.
Yeah.
So
has it increased that much here though? Or are we just talking about it more? Because when my mom was the homeless liaison for Eastern Oregon for a long time, and I remember there was numerous years in a row where we had the highest teen homeless rate in the state per capita.
Yeah,
there was like 4 or 5 years in a row.
Right.
You don't hear about those though. You know what I mean? And that's part of the number. You like anybody that's displaced, whether they're sleeping on somebody's couch hopping, whatever, they're homeless. You know what I mean? Are we just hearing about it more now?
Team, and you and I have talked about this a little bit. Team homelessness is a little bit more challenging. And you were a high school teacher for a long time, and you know that. It could, because if you have a kid, and he's like, he doesn't want to put up with his mom and dad's rules anymore. He'll go, it's like, I'm going to go stay at my friend's house, and he's on their couch. Well, that kid is technically homeless, but he's not homeless in the way of someone we see out there who literally they're in a tent, So, I mean, that's a little bit skewed, but to answer your question though, my perception is yes, there are more people, and whether they're homeless or not, there are more people that are, they're looking through the garbage for cans. They're wandering around. They're hanging around. They clearly don't have a place to go during the day.
Well, and let me argue the teen homeless thing again.
Yeah.
It might be skewed, but we had the highest in the whole state.
Yeah.
That's not skewed.
Yeah.
Per capita.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're going to have, Pendleton's going to have about the same amount of kids that are leaving home because they're not happy with their parents, but ours higher across the board, so everything's high. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether it's you're not happy with your parents, or you can't afford to be, and I think back in the days, we just didn't see the homeless people. There was homeless people, trust me. They all lived out back behind the baseball fields. There was quite a few people that lived out there. We just didn't see them.
Yeah.
So I would challenge what the numbers were. Like, how much higher is it really, or are we just seeing them? Obviously the housing rate has, housing is expensive, so it's probably higher, but I would want to see numbers, how many people were percentage wise. Is it just not because it's 2023 and it's not embarrassing to be homeless anymore?
I think that is part of it.
I do too.
I think that is part of it. Part of it is that, that stigma of being homeless. And I think, I don't know. I think, and again, this is a judgment, but I would imagine that there's a little bit of entitlement that has kind of come out of this movement. So in other words, it's like, I don't have to be embarrassed that I'm homeless anymore. And this society owes me a place to camp. I think that is something that has kind of come out of this community. It's okay if I camp here because that's what they do in the cities. And so I don't know, but we see it more. So I don't know. You have anything you want to throw into that?
Yeah,
It's kind of
I
a
don't
hot
have
mess.
I don't have answers, but I do on a different subject.
Yeah.
So I forgot about one of the stops.
He's like, no more homeless talk. We're getting off.
No, actually, I mean, it's an important discussion, but and I think the more you dig, the more you find out you don't know.
Right.
100%.
So one of the stops that I forgot to mention was at a food cart pod. And because people say, how come we don't have a food cart pod? Why don't we have that in Union County? I said, well,
Start one.
they're like the center of the universe for food carts. So I asked about that and they put it together. And this one is actually an incubator. And it is a Hispanic community works on incubating food carts that are, they get 1 year there.
Yeah.
Utilities, I think it's utilities and rent free. And so I met with the person from their health department that really did the background research, put the folks together because there was a lot of different entities to include brick and mortar restaurants that put together their policy. And it's a fairly extensive policy on food carts. And really what they're looking at is spacing so one doesn't burn and take all of them down. Trash, pest control, and waste disposal, sewer, and to include garbage. And it was really interesting on who has the authority, who has the ownership, who's responsible for that. And looking forward to having some conversations with some folks here about that. And I mean, if that's something that could be developed, I think they've got a really good framework that's not too prescriptive. Mm-hmm. Basically, hey, you take care of these things. You're able to operate here. And then also, and I, like a lot of people, I really like food and was able to try Cuban food in this one food cart. And it was delicious. So
Cuban food. So was it Mercado? Was that where you went?
Yeah.
That's
exactly where we went.
Yeah. It's kind of that place is like kind of like groundbreaking for that.
Yeah.
That style of it kind of reminds me of like Asian families. Like Asian families, when they come over to America, they'll live together in one house and they'll pool their money. This is quite common, especially in California. And until one person can buy a business, and then that person buys a business, gets on their feet, sets out, and then they do it. You know what I mean? And then it's just that's kind of like the same philosophy, right? You guys all just kind of work together until, now it's your time to grow up and go out into the big world.
Yeah. And with a timeline, I mean, it's a year.
It's cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
So yeah, that was I thought a very, for me, educational stop. But
well, and I think we've seen an increase in food carts locally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean that industry is popping up.
Yep.
More and more as that is happening.
Good. And so one of the questions I had, I said, what do the brick and mortar restaurants think about a food pod going in? He said, oddly enough, they're generally supportive of it because they hear about this food cart at this one pod and they go try it and they walk by the restaurant and go, hey, I've never seen that restaurant before. And then eventually they come back to the brick and mortar for at least one meal.
Right.
And so it really kind of brings in traffic, or if the line's too long at a food cart, they might go to the restaurant, or didn't make reservations, or they don't have seating for a while longer, go to the food cart, and they still leave with a fairly positive experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. I'm so glad I did it.
Oh,
and yeah,
awesome. Well, Paul, thank you for
bet.
being here. Yeah, and appreciate you and appreciate the conversation. And you kind of like sparked it. We just kind of took off. So, yeah.
Oh, that went by.
The EOU cross country runner that I couldn't remember his last name, John Colby, got it for me. Hunter Nichols. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I just had a brain fart. And then Cody said, "I'm a big scary dude. I don't know."
You have.
What were we talking about?
I don't. That was early on
so
when
far
you
from
made
the
that.
truth, though.
Yeah.
Like I'm not. I'm soft. I'm a teddy bear.
Well, after they get to know you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all righty, man.
Let's get us out of here.
Yeah.
September 12th, on this day, 1787, American statesman George Mason suggests that the addition of a Bill of Rights to the Constitution modeled on previous state declarations, but the motion was defeated at the time. So the first time it was brought to people, it was defeated. 1857, 423 people die when steamship SS Central America, the ship of gold, which is the first ship bringing gold back from California, sinks in the hurricane off of South Carolina. It was carrying tons of gold coins and bricks, and it was rediscovered in 1988.
Wow.
That's crazy. That's 100 years later. 130 years later,
Yeah.
you find this ship and all this gold from the first trade, the very beginning of the gold rush in California. 1981, the Smurfs animated cartoon series by Hanna-Barbera first broadcast in North America in 1981. I didn't know it was that old. I thought it was more like late 80s, but 2012, Apple unveils its iPhone 5. And then 5 years later, they unveil the premium iPhone X, the first phone that costs over $1,000. $1,000. It was a $999 phone to buy it, which is crazy. Remember back in the days where you could just sign a 2-year contract and you got the best phone for free? Not anymore. Not anymore. 2022, Queen Elizabeth II's coffin makes a ceremonial procession down the Royal Mile in Edinburgh from the Palace of Holyrood House to St. Giles Cathedral, where 20,000 people pay their respects. It's already been over a year since she died.
Wow.
That's crazy. Time is just flying.
Yep.
And then the number one song in America 10 years ago on this day, Katy Perry, Roar. Quote for the day. Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. Oscar Wilde, one more time. Every saint has a past, every sinner has a future.
There's truth in that.
Right?
Yep.
Good.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
you.
Thanks for being here.
See you on Thursday.
Yep. Right here.